Hi all, Wolf Lord Rho here. Before I begin today, a big thank you to Crawdaddy for the virtual gift voucher. Huge thank you my friend for the support, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I will absolutely be checking out the Lion Primarch novel when it hits its standard release. You can rest assured about that. But on to today. Today we kick off our Jaghatai Khan Primarch week. And man have I been waiting for this. We've spoken about the Khan a fair bit on the channel before, and covered some great moments of his already. But with this week, much like the Iron Warriors week we use to understand the character of Perturabo, I want this week to truly dive into the character of Jaghatai Khan, the most unknown Primarch. And yes, I said it, Alfarius fans. And luckily for us, that just happens to cover some of his most epic moments. And really, when we're looking at the character of Jagatai, there is only one place to begin. With the Khan's very first journey to Terra, his relationship with his father the Emperor, and his first ever meeting with Malcador the Sigillite. Spoiler warning to begin, the events we are discussing today are from the Horus Heresy Primarch series novel Jaghatai Khan, Warhawk of Chagoris by Chris Raitt. As always, I really recommend you read the story for yourself first, because that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. Not only that, we help to support the great Games Workshop and Black Library, because without them, we don't have this amazing lore to talk about. I will put a link in the description as always. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Now I really have to begin in one place. At the beginning of Warhawk of Chagoris, there is a real short 2-page scene where the Emperor is walking atop the walls of the Imperial Palace, and he is being accompanied by a sage, a Rembrandter, whose life work is to collect and collate all stories and knowledge of the life of the Primarchs, all the deeds they have accomplished in their time away from the Emperor. And during this walk, the sage is rattling off how the archive is ready for the Emperor, and he hopes it will prove some use. The Emperor, of course, carries on seemingly oblivious to the sage's ramblings, stopping upon the wall to stare up into the star-filled sky. And the sage nervously attempts to fill the silence, going on to mention how it's been easier to study some Primarchs more than others, which of course is no doubt part of the Emperor's grand plan. Each of them have their own role. But then he remarks, there is the Warhawk, the Great Khan. Of all the Primarchs, he has never come close to him. And whatever his gift is, the sage remains ignorant of it. And this gains the Emperor's attention. Some accounts saying he smiled, others not. You wish to know what gift Jagatai possesses? The Emperor said. Yes, my liege, said the sage, very much. But nothing is known, nothing is settled. His entry into the library will be slender, and even that will be supposition and hearsay. Sometimes I wonder if he is real at all, or just the rumour of a savage people. With him, with this great Khan, there is only confusion. The Emperor began to walk again. There is your answer, he said. And this passage just sums it all up perfectly, on so many levels. It sums up Jagatai perfectly, because he is confusion. You don't know what Jagatai is going to do. Nobody does, not even the Emperor. That is why he was created, to be that rogue element, to be that independent spirit. And then, what I love most is something I think that too often gets forgotten about when discussing Jagatai and the Emperor, is that the Emperor understands that. And why wouldn't he? He created the Primarchs. He made them each for specific roles. He knows Jagatai's nature just as much as Jagatai himself. Perhaps even more so. And to me, it's all the more poignant, because despite knowing the Khan's nature and how he made him, he still can't help them connect better with each other. Now, when the Emperor reunited with each of his Primarchs, they always returned with him to Terra, before being given their legion and sent out to take their place within the Crusade. And Jagatai was no exception. And I've spoken on Jagatai and the Emperor's relationship before, and we will obviously do more of that as the week progresses. But it's certainly safe to say Jagatai and the Emperor had an estranged relationship, to say the least. And this really stems from the fact that Jagatai did not agree with the Imperial truth. And this couldn't be more evident, as the first we see of Jagatai is bursting through a set of doors within the Imperial Palace. He's absolutely furious, storming down the corridor irate, and you've got all the courtiers and servants desperately scurrying about trying to get out of this stampeding giant's way, papers and data slates flying all over the place as he burst through the door. And it's clear he's just come from talking with his father, the Emperor. His neck, if he does not learn to bend it, one day it will break. He rants as he continues his pace. The mind unequalled, he growls, but the neck, that is the weakness, that is the flaw. He gazes on the infinite, the Khan spat. But we are body, blood and bone. Scorn not your tools, say the sages, the Khan said. Scorn not the blade that cuts, lest it open your own veins. And this is really up for interpretation on what exactly you think the Khan is referring to. But to me, it's very much that the Emperor is so focused on what needs to be done, the end game, the ultimate goal, that he loses sight on the here and now, always gazing on the infinite, as the Khan states. And really, he is prepared to make some sacrifices to make sure they get there, to make the hard decisions. And it's a fair reflection, but let's be real here. The Emperor has the survival of the entire species on his shoulders, the entire galaxy. He essentially has been created himself to shepherd mankind into their future, to safeguard their existence. And to do that, he has to defeat the ruinous powers. But the key thing here is, I think Jagatai didn't realise for too long, is that the Emperor didn't enjoy having to make those decisions. He did what was needed to be done, at least in his mind. And the scorn not your tools and the blade that cuts, I think there may have just been a father-son argument there. Later, we get another glimpse of the Khan's mind when one of his sons asks the Khan just what the Emperor said to him. The Khan looked up at him, roused from his thoughts, then smiled grimly. "I'm still trying to decide," he said. "It's hard with him to know, hard even to look at him." Now I love this line because yes, the Khan's referring to a being like no other in the Emperor, but this is such a human trait. Every single one of us has had a conversation in our lives, or an argument, only for it to play on your mind later. You start to go over it again in your head, questioning it. What did they mean by that? What were they really trying to say? And here that's exactly what Jagatai is doing. The Khan ran his hand over his face, rubbing at the scar that ran down his left cheek. "He's done this 14 times before," he said. "When my brother Horus was returned, there were festivals here for a month. Now they barely notice another one arriving. And yet, for us," he shook his head. "A year ago, all you could do was hang off a mount and build a fire from its dung. Now look at you." This here, another eye-opening insight. The Imperial Palace most likely has the new Primarch procedure down to a T by now, having done it 14 times. The schedule, the procedures, It's become an expected thing, as opposed to the monumental event like Horus's first arrival, the first sun found. But here Jagatai is letting slip the smallest peek into his insecurity. While this may be a custom now for the Imperial Palace, to him, this is still monumental. Everything he's ever known, that feeling he's had in the back of his mind his entire existence, that he was created for something else, something greater, and now it's here. And you get the impression that this is particularly monumental for the White Scars Legion, summed up by Jagatai's comments about going from making a fire from horse dung to this. Only the Space Wolves really can be said to have such a dramatic change as well. Many others come from functioning technological worlds, despite the depravity or tyranny that they may have had to overthrow there. But for the Scars, this is an indescribable change. Sure, they have a Primarch, but he's as new to Terra as they are, and he's acutely aware of it. But Jagatai continues in thinking out loud. I should admire him more, I know, the Khan said pensively. I should be able to see what it is that makes them love him. And again, a really insightful comment into the mind of Jagatai. You really do get the impression that he is just thinking out loud, just letting his thoughts roll out. But Jagatai, as we've already discussed, was made for a very specific reason, to be that unknown element. It's no wonder to me that he struggled to bond with the Emperor. But what I love is that through the journey Jagatai takes, through all the trials and challenges to come, eventually, before the end, he understands why the Emperor made the decisions he did. And we'll see this through the course of the week. But here, Jagatai remains unbowed, seeing just another tyrant, making the rules as he wants them, as can be seen in his first meeting with Malcador. And tune in tomorrow when we cover Malcador. No. There's too many things I want to discuss this week. We're talking about that first encounter right now. Now Jagatai has been avoiding the meeting, where many Primarchs spent months on Terra. It rankles Jagatai, makes him feel enclosed, surrounded by bureaucrats. The disagreements with his father, he just wants to get away, to ride, to breathe. What can Malcador tell him that his father already hasn't? He's just a slave after all. And there's a great comment from Yasugai who basically says, well, that may be, but if he is a slave, he's the most powerful slave I've ever met. His power dwarfs everybody's, save the Emperor himself. And ultimately, Jagatai relents, agreeing to the meeting. And they meet within a small chamber, dimly lit by candlelight. Jagatai feeling like he's meeting a grey-skinned Gaul, and reflects that it's as if the Imperium is governed by two faces of a single man. One always healthy, the other sick. And you've got to believe that little tidbit was thrown in there for the conspiracy theorists. But the greeting Jagatai displays is hardly welcoming, simply stating you wish to see me. And Malcador is left lamenting the fact that Jagatai is already leaving. You could stay longer. Others have. Your brother Vulcan spent many years here, and I came to know him well before he left for Nocturne. I have already given the order. The Sigillite nodded, and that too was how we made you. He limped towards the Primarch, skirting around a long stone sarcophagus and trailing his fingers along the dusty top. Then he drew himself up to his full height, pushed his cowl back from a withered brow, and looked at the Khan carefully. I never know what we'll see when you come back. All of you surprise us. And the frosty conversation continues. You were monarchs of your worlds, and now we ask you to fight for this one. You were never given the tutelage we had planned, and so the wrench is sudden. If we could postpone the crusade for 100 years in order to prepare you adequately, we would do so. But we cannot. for we race against the closing door of fate. All must be gathered in. But remember this. You are a son of Terra. You were made here. I was made on Chagoris. The Sigillite smiled. I should put that keening self-pity behind you if you wish to earn the allegiance of your new army. The Khan turned on him, unclasping his arms as if he wished to draw his blade. It is all a lie, he said fervently. Every part of it. We'll be burning their temples and executing their priests in return for 1,000,000 worlds, all as ignorant as beasts. Is that what you wanted? Here again the Khan just letting his faults spill out. The one thing he simply can't come to terms with, that the Imperial truth is based on a lie. For the sons of Chagoris have always known that beings lurk within the warp. The Yaksha. It is necessary. We could tell them the truth. Do not be foolish. The Khan's lips curled in disgust. So much contempt for your own species. Yes, contempt, snapped the Sigillite. If you had seen what I have seen, watched what a human may become when left alone in the dark, you would share it. He collected himself. You were lucky, Jagatai. Your world was no Caliban. We tell you of old night and you barely believe us. But that is not how most places were. The lie is noble. It is there to protect, to guard, not to deceive, for they are not ready. And that's a great passage from Malcador there. First, you were lucky, Jagatai, and in a sense he's telling the truth. Chagoris was most certainly not a Caliban. While Jagatai's upbringing was certainly no breeze, no pun intended, it was hardly the trials of the lion. And in a sense, Malcador's point here is actually true. For once Jagatai truly sees the forces and terrors of chaos, he comes to accept that his father was right. The Khan smiled cynically, and when all is finished, then we will revisit the lie. When all is finished. The Primarch laughed, but there was no mirth in it. He tapped an armoured finger idly on the lip of one of the tombs. I wonder some days why you gave us minds at all. Machines would have given you less grief. Less grief, surely. Less joy, too. You have found it hard to understand your father. You wish him to be more intelligible. I understand that. But do not be seduced by the scale of his power. He has sacrificed more than any of us, and he does not use it for himself. A man may pursue a single goal and become the master of that endeavour, only to find himself weakened in all other pursuits. The Emperor battles daily with forces beyond understanding, yet you expect him to retain a mortal sympathy. The Sigillite shook his head. He walks the paths of eternity. Be thankful that he is able to converse with you at all. Man, what a passage that is. Just sums up the Emperor perfectly. Firstly, the less joy too comment. If they wanted just tools, then exactly why not just machines? But there is joy there. There is care. But the real hammer blow, he has sacrificed more than any of us. A man may pursue a single goal and become the master of that endeavour, only to find himself weakened in all other pursuits. The Emperor battles daily with forces beyond understanding, yet you expect him to retain a mortal sympathy. The Emperor is giving everything he can to fighting the powers of chaos, and it's simply something the Primarchs can't understand. But it's not their fault, because it simply wasn't shared with them. It's saddening and heartwarming in the same measure. Saddening that the Emperor makes the sacrifice, giving everything for humanity. And then that makes you cherish those Emperor Primarch moments we get all the more. And you get the sense that he most likely cherishes them himself too. Yet so too do they shoot themselves in the foot. For virtually all the frustrations that stem from the Primarchs with wanting their father's attention and understanding what it is he seeks to achieve, could simply have been undone by telling them of the forces of chaos. And yet, it could have hastened their fall all the quicker. We will never truly know the answer. Their conversation continues with Malcador imploring the Khan to stay, to speak with the Emperor again and listen to what he has to say. But the Khan again just lets his thoughts spill out. That he suffocates in this place, and more words won't change that. He already has his destination and he's already ordered them to leave. That maybe when the hunt is underway and he has the enemy within his grasp, that perhaps he will see the truth of what they say. But Malcador simply corrects him. You will find no truth out there amongst the stars that you cannot see from here. Then I will have to come back, said the Khan, already restive, already moving. Someday, when the moment is right, not before. And it's an absolutely fascinating conversation. The Khan is quite possibly the most truthful Primarch of all. He doesn't hide his inner thoughts, he just lets them go. The Khan's one of those characters that will just tell you straight to your face what he's thinking, and he doesn't care about upsetting your feelings. But don't make a mistake here, Jagatai isn't happy about disagreeing with the Emperor. He doesn't want to disagree. It's just how he feels. Such a great conversation. And of course, as we know, he does return, to stand on the walls of the Imperial Palace, in defiance of the ruinous powers, in defense of mankind, and for the Emperor. Oh man, I am going to enjoy this week. As always guys, what do you think? Was Jagatai always going to disagree with the Imperial truth? Are you surprised by his cold meeting with Malcador? Is Malcador just a slave? And are you surprised he ultimately comes to understand? As always, drop your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. A huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support really means a lot to me, it truly does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again tomorrow, as Jaghatai Khan Week continues.